The most merciful thing in the world is the inability of the human mind to correlate all of its contents. We live in a placid island of ignorance in the midst of black seas of infinity, and it was not meant that we should voyage far. H.P. Lovecraft. What is the shadow? If you're a student of spiritual matters, you may have come across the term shadow work, or the shadow. The term was popularized in the works of Carl Jung and refers to the darker or unconscious parts of our psyche, particularly the parts of ourselves that make us uncomfortable or are difficult to face or admit. Jung's work was an extension of Freud's theory of the unconscious, and this makes sense seeing as Jung was a student of Freud. The two later became adversaries after parting ways, but that's a story for another time. What fascinated Jung about Freud's theory of the unconscious was the idea of an experience can be so shocking to the ego that it's repressed by consciousness into the subconscious. Quote, "We too can become dissociated and lose our identity. We can be possessed and altered by moods, or become unreasonable and unable to recall important facts about yourself or others, so that people ask, what the devil has gotten into you?" We talk about being able to control ourselves, but self-control is a rare and remarkable virtue. We may think of ourselves as under control, yet a friend can easily tell us things about ourselves of which we have no knowledge. In Robert Greene's Laws of Human Nature, the law of repression seems to be precise. He writes about how below the surface of masks people put on, there is a dark shadow of insecurity, envy, and greed. And if we are unaware of this, their actions can be a mindfuck. Someone's image of virtue can be a cover for their unreal motives. We must be aware of our own dark side. By integrating our shadow, it helps us become more conscious of the motivations of those around us, but also makes us more attractive and authentic as well. And we return to Jung. Quote, "It is not merely the shadow side of our personalities that we overlook, disregard, and repress. The same may also be said of our positive qualities. An example that comes to mind is that of an apparent modest and self-effacing man with charming manners. He always seemed content with a backseat, but discreetly insisted upon being present. When asked to speak, he would offer a well-informed opinion, though he never intruded it. But he sometimes hinted that a given matter would be dealt with in a far superior way at a certain higher level." Jung, in speaking of Western powers during the Cold War, says, quote, "What he fails to see is that in his own vices, which he has covered up by good international manners that are thrown back in his face by the communist world, shamelessly and methodically, that the West has tolerated, but secretly and with a slight sense of shame, the diplomatic lie, systematic deceptions, veiled threats, comes back into the open and in full measure from the East and ties up in neurotic knots. It is in the face of his own evil shadow that grins at Western man from the other side of the Iron Curtain. It is this state of affairs that explains the peculiar feeling of helplessness of so many people in Western societies. They have begun to realize that the difficulties confronting us are moral problems, and that the attempts to answer them by policy of piling up nuclear arms or by economic competition is achieving little, for it cuts both ways. Many of us now understand that moral and mental means would be more sufficient, since they could provide us with psychic immunity against the ever-increasing infection. What Jung understood was that in any war or any conflict, someone can get so caught up in defeating evil that they can, and often do, become the very evil that they were fighting against in the first place. See my video on this and what is Marxism, what is capitalism, where I go a bit more in depth into the economic and ideological conflict of the Cold War for a good portion. The shadow can be seen in any number of films, TV shows, music, etc., particularly in the death metal and black metal genres, for obvious reasons. In pop culture, it is most apparent in the use of anti-heroes. In Breaking Bad, for instance, we see a science teacher working after school at a car wash with a boss who treats him like shit. And if that weren't shitty enough, he gets cancer and doesn't want to ask the people in the company he helped start to pay for his treatment because he has too much pride. A theme that comes up again and again. So he takes up cooking crystal meth with one of his former students.
Yeah, Mr. White. Yes, science.
Another great use of the shadow is Fight Club, written by Chuck Palahniuk. Yeah, I love that, man. how many times have you gotten tedious orders from your boss and you just wanted to punch him in the face? Or in this case, yourself in the face. The wimpy protagonist later meets Tyler Durden. And again, life is on his terms, not the world's terms. The two eventually start a fight club where their primal, shadowy impulses and the shadows of the shadowy basement are expressed by the shadowy impulses of other shadowy guys. I can't help myself. Ultimately, Tyler Durden, okay, no spoilers, go ahead like 20 seconds from now, or just, pause and watch the fucking movie or read the book. I mean, read something. Okay, assuming that you've watched the movie, Tyler ultimately is the shadowy shadow of the protagonist. Bam. He embodies the sexily nihilist, truly zero fucks given, supreme action being fried up and served with keto lipo fat. Now, how's that for a word salad toss?
Wrong.
Since it is Halloween, spooky, scary, how can we talk about the shadow without talking about horror films? I mean, for fuck's sake, I have Pinhead on my shirt. Whether it's Freddy Freddy Krueger. I mean, although Tom Green is pretty terrifying. Whether it's Freddy Krueger, Jason, Michael Myers, Pinhead, Chucky, etc. We all seem to love these characters. Just slash up teens and stab them to death. Or grind them up into a smoothie. Or murder them after some good fucking. Or whatever this is. I mean, I love all that shit as much as the next dork. But if you take a step back, you have to... Okay, I'm totally not promoting my yoga instructor short film right now. Although that yoga workout is pretty terrifying. You have to see that it's kind of fucked up that we enjoy seeing each other being shredded to bits. At the same time, however, this is also why we love horror films. They are the dreamlike realms where our most violent fantasies can be explored.
We'll tear your soul apart.
Now, you might be wondering, can the shadow be used for good? According to Jordan Peterson, clinical psychologist and dad of the internet, he's often quoted as saying that you must develop your capacity for being a monster or a villain to become a fully integrated human. So you have to be capable of evil to be good? Precisely. Someone who is too agreeable will be easily talked into things that they don't actually want to do, but are afraid to say, fuck off, I'm not doing that because, well, that just wouldn't be very nice. Over time, this creates a great deal of resentment, and they snap. However, when someone with a few points in the disagreeable direction are more likely to stand up for themselves, get the results they want, and are less resentful in the process. Peterson also remarks that you need to integrate the dark part of yourself to become a truly good person. We have to ask ourselves, who would be more virtuous? Someone who is kind all the time because they aren't capable of standing up for themselves, or someone who is capable of destroying you and chooses to do a favor because they actually want to. That concludes today's episode on the shadow. I am Parker Tebow from Focus Shift Media. Shout out to my friend Alec for helping me out with the cinematography and lighting setup. I hope you are going to have a groovy Halloween, despite the, being locked in our houses for all these months. I hope you guys find some kind of, still a way to stay sane and spend time with the people you enjoy hanging out with and so forth. Something to look forward to given all the chaos in the world currently. But I hope it's also the time to it's been described that the lockdown has been a collective ayahuasca ceremony, and it's useful to examine our own shadows. I mean, it's very easy if we've been wronged or if some kind of injustice is committed against us we can be very self-righteous, but when we understand our own shadow and our own capacity to commit evil, it makes us not tolerate or be passive of the evil in the world, but more understanding, and then we can deal with it accordingly. So I hope you're more than welcome to check out some of the other content we have on the channel as well. and happy Halloween.